Hi, I'm Larry Weber, Professor of Civil and Environmental Engineering at the University of Iowa and Director of IIHR, Hydroscience and Engineering, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
I'm Mark Kenyon.
I'm Dr. Julie Meechan.
I'm Steve Hansen.
I'm Jill Bebout.
Chad Gravy.
My name is Jeremy French.
I'm Laura Walter.
Carol Hawksbergen, owner of Hypoxia Native Seeds, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
This is Hal Herring, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Podcast.
Skip Sly, Iowa Whitetail.
Valerie Van Coten, State Historical Society of Iowa.
Dr. Matt Helmer at Iowa State University.
My name is Kyle Laubarger with the Native Habitat Project.
I'm Judd McCullum. I appeared out of the wilderness, and this is the Prairie Farm Podcast.
Welcome to the Prairie Farm Podcast.
When I was in college, I worked for a marketing company, and it was a small marketing company, and my boss, he was a really cool guy, and I remember him taking me to lunch one day and telling me, Nicholas, the most important thing you'll do in business is name your company. I don't know if that's true or not, but you better believe I was blown away when I met the company Iowa Cover Crop. I mean, it's a brilliant name, but it's a little misleading because you might think, oh, okay, they do cover crops. But they actually do a lot more than cover crops. Basically, if it's not corn and beans, they probably have it. You're talking about grains, alfalfas, lawn mixes, cover crop mixes, forage mixes. They do all sorts of things. In fact, they even have CRP and native mixes. I really like the people who provide those for them. If you are looking for anything that's not corn and beans and seed and you're in Iowa or a state touching Iowa, I highly, highly recommend looking into Iowa Cover Crop. That's iowacovercrop.com. Oh, and they have a new podcast. I really enjoy it. They didn't ask me to put this in the ad. I just wanted to because I've really enjoyed their podcast. Super informational. If you're looking to learn more about cover crops for your farm and how they can apply for your specific situation, you're going to want to check it out. It's called Under the Covers. Again, that's iowacovercrop.com. Announcement to our listeners. I am selling our coffee shop so that we could try and build a house like we're hanging out in now. Larry,
yeah, I've never seen Nicholas like genuinely gushing over like it's got this feature and it's got this.
It's got everything you could possibly want.
Yeah, this place is awesome.
And it's it's roomy, but it's not huge. You know, I think when people have to make huge houses to feel, when they have to build tons of square footage to actually feel inviting, it's because they're not good at interior design. I'm not good at interior design, but my wife holds a candle for it. And but this place, you've got a real, I want you just to describe your water system here because it's awesome.
Yeah, so we do rainwater capture off of the roof, and we have a 1,500-gallon cistern that we bring the water into. It stores it outside underground, and then just a small well pump that brings it in through a pressure regulator into a pressure holding tank that kind of evens the pressure out. It goes through a coarse filter. Then we chlorinate it, so it has a little residence time in a chlorine holding tank, a fine filter, and then through a UV light disinfectant to drinkable. And so we go from the rooftop to the ground and then through a simple water treatment system to drinkable water here in the cabin.
That's so cool.
And
is there like a distinct taste to your water here compared to like in town or?
Well, certainly, we do moderate the chlorine holding time very carefully, so there's no chlorine taste. And so it's a very neutrally tasting water. It's a very good water. It's also soft water because it's not being brought up through groundwater resources. Sure. So it's a very soft water as well. So we don't have any water softening here.
That's nice.
Knoxville's terrible, and it's so bad that the plumbers don't put a water softener in. That you replace it every other year. It's really terrible. Really? Yeah.
What's the cause?
Well, we get it from the Jordan Aquifer, and so I just imagine that's a lot of calcium in that. I that's my assumption. I guess I should interview them, shouldn't I?
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know.
I'm not trying to dox how much you spent on it, but I asked him. It was way cheaper, by orders of magnitude cheaper, to do everything he just said than I thought it would be. But I think you should invest in flavored roof tiles. You can get flavored water.
I'll take another glass of bacon, please.
Well, when we do fill the tank, to that point, Nicholas, oftentimes what we'll do is we have a diverter. So the water from the rooftop isn't continuously running through the cistern. So it diverts around it. When we need to fill it, my preference is for it to rain for a day or two. Then divert over to filling the cistern, and then we'll divert back away from it. Because there is some flavoring up there. Imagine all the birds that fly through and come through this area.
Probably a lot of mulberry this time of year.
So that's one of the strategies, towards doing rooftop water capture.
Interesting. How often do you have to get up there and clean gutters?
Well, we have screens on the gutters, so again to protect, and also just to keep that heavy organic material out of the cistern. So we keep things clean, and then there's another screen before it goes into the cistern. Should anything come through the gutter screens?
How often do you have to get out and replace that one?
Oh, that one is, just really close and local. So just a little spritz of water here and there, to keep that clean. No problem.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, you have a beautiful prairie out here that the legend himself, Carl Kurtz, gave you or sold you seed for. And but what I was really amazed by is the diversity you have. Because for anyone listening, Carl Kurtz doesn't only do this, but a major way he provides seed is he just goes into his field and harvests with a combine, and he'll give you a list of what was in the field. And a lot of times he'll say, there was a lot of this. You should expect to see a lot of pale purple coneflower or a lot of lead plant or something of the sort. And you've got a little bit of change in the topography from one spot's of prairie to the other. And it is fascinating seeing what is growing out there in the clayier areas. That was really, but you planted like 14 years ago. And I'm curious, everyone thinks that prairie people sell them sand the first couple of years. Did you kind of understand it was going to take forever, or was there a...
We did. I mean, we certainly had guidance in the process. And, my dear friend Connie Mutel, who is a true prairie enthusiast, was able to help, guide me through it. And we did regular mowings for the first 2 years to keep ahead of the weed pressure. It was planted following a soybean crop, so we had very little stover on the land. So we did hand seeding, and then we had a cultimulture come through just to improve the soil seed contact. But it was hand seeded in January. We did get snow later that year. And so there was, I think just a really ideal time to get it seeded.
Yeah, that sounds like perfect seeding conditions.
Gosh, if being, lucky the first time is a strategy, we were certainly lucky because it worked out perfectly. We're so delighted.
14 years later, and the diversity you have out here is just astounding.
Yeah,
it really is.
And there's a lot of space on the ground. The cool seasons are really kept at bay. There's a video on the Hypoxia native seeds social media, Instagram or whatnot, if you want to see a little bit of it. But
I know it's a little disjointed since we already moved on to the prairie, but I want to go back to the house because I sent my father-in-law, the notorious Jim Pa, a video of this. I said, this is like your dream setup here. So we talked about the water, but I think it's also cool to talk about this is completely off the grid. Not just for water, but for your electricity as well. You talk about your system you have for that as well?
Yeah, that's right. So so we rely on solar here for the power for the cabin. And because we are off grid, we also have to have a battery. And so we're about a 10 kilowatt solar system with 20 panels.
What does that mean? What is it? I mean, I know that's a certain amount of energy, but is that per day or?
That's a peak generation. Okay. And so if you come out and I could show you, all of our data that come off of the solar panels, but the peak capacity is at say 10 kilowatt of power, but that only occurs when the sun is perfectly oriented to the panels. And in our case, would only occur if we had full demand and load. So what most often happens here is that, we see some regression of the battery state of charge overnight. And so in the morning, then the battery has to recharge. And so the solar panels start to charge. And before the sun can come up to that perfect peak energy production, the battery's already charged. And we needed that number of panels because in the winter, when all of a sudden our daylight is only 9 hours, the sun is not at the perfect orientation, and so the solar panels aren't as efficient. And so we might generate on a winter day, if we're out here using power, maybe peak out at about 6,000 watts or 6 kW. In the summer, if we're out here really hammering the air conditioning and trying to keep things cool, we could approach, I think, probably 8,000 is the most that we've ever seen. Sure. So anyway, so there's a ground array solar panel set up, and we did put it on the ground so that I could have access to it in the winter to be able to clear it and keep the snow off of it. And then inside of the cabin, to cover the power overnight, we have an 18.5 kilowatt hour lithium ion phosphate battery.
So what does that mean? 8.5 kilowatt hour. That means it can output as much as 8.5 kilowatts per hour?
No, so that means that it could output 18,500 watts for 1 hour and then be dead.
Oh, okay.
Or it could do 1 kW for 18.5 hours continuously. So it's a kilowatt hour. So it's the two multiplied together. Now, what's interesting is that when you do have an off-grid property, all of a sudden you know exactly the power demand of everything that you do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And when you turn on a light switch, you know what the light wattage is going to draw. With all of the LED technologies in lighting today, the power demand for the lighting for the cabin is almost insignificant. We have a refrigerator, we have an electric stove, we have a mini split that we use for dehumidification and electric and air conditioning. It also provides some heat in the winter. So the mini split unit would be the most power demanding.
I'm shocked. It's on the second floor. How cool it is down here on the first floor. Especially because the sun's been baking for 3 days.
Cold air sinks.
It does. And so this open stairway that we have serves both winter and summer. So in the summer, with the dehumidification and air conditioning upstairs, that cold air kind of slowly moves down through the cabin. In the winter, we have hydronic heat in the floor of the cabin, in the basement, and we maintain about 57 degrees down there, and that slowly rises through the open stairway as heat rises. So we end up with pretty balanced conditions, and our set points are high. So we're not trying to cool it to maybe the levels that you would your own home. I did bump it down a bit this morning, knowing that we would be here. So that it was comfortable.
Thank you.
Feels wonderful. It's the only air conditioning I'll have for the rest of my day. So.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Man, so first of all, hydronic heating is water. So you have a water heater, an electric water heater that runs through in the basement floor for anyone who didn't know. But what is really astounding to me is that tiny little battery that's the size of a kitchen, your kitchen sink.
About the size of a dishwasher.
Yeah. So about the size of a dishwasher. It can power this house for, if you were being conservative and the power went out in the winter, a day and a half, how long could it?
Almost undoubtedly. Every year we have the winter solstice on December 20th, and it takes a few days. It's really about a week before we start gaining any light, after that. And it seems
miserable time.
It's really a dark time, right? Yeah. And it seems like every year, that week after Christmas, between Christmas and New Year's, we can have very low overcast, maybe not the coldest weather that we have, but the dreariest, darkest, lowest skies. And we may produce almost no electricity. And we've gone about 5 days of that battery being able to support the systems here in a minimalistic operation. Now, if we were out here for 3 of those 5 days, and we were, firing up the electric oven every night, cooking, frozen pizzas, obviously we wouldn't be able to, make it 5 days. But with minimal use, we can easily get through 5 days.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of reassuring. To have to have gone through something like that, because I imagine when you went through those 5 days, was it by day 6? It's like, ooh, we have another day of no charge.
Yeah.
Or was it like, I think we could go another 2-3 days?
Well, by nature, I'm a little bit high strung and uptight as it is. And so, so I'm monitoring things. What's nice is that all of these systems can be monitored remotely. In the fiber to rural America, that's gone through in the last several years. Fiber optics were installed out at the roadway, and we were able to bring fiber back to the cabin.
That's cool.
And so, we've got 80 gigabit service out here. So I can keep track of what the state of charge of the battery is, what the power production is on the solar system, what the temperatures are within the cabin.
So it's just, when it's in that minimalistic state, it's just basically keeping the house warm enough so pipes aren't freezing.
That's exactly it.
And stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And then we've got, a really nice soapstone wood stove. And if you kind of know the wood stoves, of course, in the older days when they were just a steel chamber, they would heat up really fast and then, of course, cool down really fast. And then the cast iron stoves came out and they heated up a little bit slower, but they they radiated heat longer. The soapstone wood stoves are even slower to heat up, but that thing will radiate heat after the fire's gone out for 6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
And it's just a wonderful, even and warm heat.
Well, and there's nothing like, I'm in the process, the next few weeks, I think the installation will begin at my house, getting a wood stove insert. Yeah. We had one when I was a kid, and there's just nothing like, gas stove doesn't do it, electric stove doesn't do it. A wood burning stove gets whatever that edge when you come in from being freezing cold, or especially cold and wet.
Right. And
a wood fire takes that edge off. The only other thing that kind of does it is like if you were to take a hot shower or something. Right. But
you're saying it like warms your bones back up.
Yeah. Like it gets all the way through you.
It does. And, there's nothing like, coming out of a tree stand after a long day of hunting and I'd have the fire, kind of stoked before I go into the stand in the afternoon. It's still going when I come back in, and kind of get it, re-energized and run through the shower and put your feet up in front of the wood stove. Man, that's living.
Right. I also want to talk a little bit about the wood in here. It's not the main focus of the podcast, but Iowa-based company did all the
give them a shout out. Who was it?
So Wild Rose Timber Works were 3 guys up in the Decorah area that ran a timber framing company for 25, 30 years. We had met them and went up and visited them and had an idea about building a cabin. The timing wasn't quite right for us, and so a few years had gone by, and we were ready to pull the trigger. And so we go back to find the guys at Wild Rose, and they'd all decided to retire. Oh. And it was quite a letdown that we weren't going to be able to probably get that done. And I contacted one of the 3 and, started a conversation. And Dale Kittleson decided that he was continuing on. He was still doing some projects, felt that this project was small enough that he would be able to do it on his own. And then one of the other members of their team, Mark Weber, did a design. Unrelated.
Oh.
Yeah, 2 Bs, not 1.
Oh, okay.
But equally as good of a person. Great guy. He helped us with the design, and there's some unique aspects to timber framing that aren't maybe the same for a stick-built home. And so he helped with the design, and he also had a connection with Extreme Panel that provided the structural insulated panels that go on the outside of the timber frame, which come pre-designed and kitted up. So once we set the frame, within a week, we were able to set the structural insulated panels and basically have the entire cabin enclosed in about 10 days.
That's crazy.
So your house, when we describe it, sounds extreme. Compared to like an average build per square foot, do you feel like it was comparable, or was this just way more expensive?
Well, it's a little bit hard for me to say because I've done so much of the labor, so much of the work myself.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't have, and I haven't gone out and tried to price, what it would be to stick build a home versus what we did here. I think there's probably, I would say with certainty that the materials probably cost more. But the energy efficiency in
it pays off in other ways.
Well, and if you've seen the growth rings on the 2x4s they make with new builds, they use for new builds. They're like, this is not even comparable to that. It's a what they say, a Cadillac versus a buggy.
Well, and I'd also just like to acknowledge Dale, when he built the frame for us, you could get a timber frame. I'm sure there are some large manufacturers that you could probably either build a pre-kitted timber frame, or sometimes they're more post and beam where they don't have the mortise and tenon and wood pegs, but they're plated and they're just kind of screwed and bolted together. So that would be more of a post and beam design. This is a true timber frame. So mortise and tenons with wood pins that draw the joinery together. And all of the joinery was hand cut. And when I say hand cut, I mean that could be with it was still power tools.
Sure, yeah.
But it didn't have 3 trees at the end of the building, run through an incredible 3D CNC process, and out the far end of the building pops a timber frame.
Right.
Dale has touched every square inch of this timber frame, and then his willingness to work with us. As a homeowner, of course, I could imagine being in his business, having lots of aspirational people that would contact you and say, hey, I want to, do a project. And by the way, I want to erect the timber frame myself, and I want to do all these things myself, and wonder just, whether the person's maybe bitten off more than they can chew.
Or going to end up being a huge headache.
We
have and they still squeak by. Judd's learning that this year. You tell real quick who it's like, you sound like a headache. Yeah. And now what I will say is that if someone's really picky about a prairie, but it's like, wow, this is going to be really great, that's not a headache. Mm-hmm. The headache is when you really clearly explain things out, and then they kind of go back and they're like, well, later when you like have the same price that it was when you quoted, and they're like, that's more. No, that's this. They kind of end up stringing along. And
are you trauma dumping right now, Nick? Is that what this is?
Man, you start being able to tell real quick. And I'm guessing Dale had a couple conversations with you and was like, I don't think this guy's a headache.
Well, we quickly became, not client customer relationship, but friends. And I think the world of Dale, and I like to do woodworking and enjoy the craft. And in this space of timber framing, Dale is at the top of the craft, and wow. we're so pleased to be able to have purchased a frame from him and erected it. And back to your comment about the cost of this versus a stick built cabin, there's nothing in here that looks like a stick built cabin, and there's value in that for us.
Absolutely, there is,
because it turned out beautifully.
Yeah, the comparison is logical to go down that path, but at the same time, you're talking about 2 totally different products.
Yeah,
this versus a regular stick built home. It's a work of art.
And I think it really brings, to what we're trying to accomplish with this entire property. Oftentimes
intentionality.
There's nothing easy about this, and as occasionally as we've explored different USDA Farm Bill type conservation practices, and we meet with some of the conservation staff at the Soil and Water Conservation District office, I remind them sometimes that there is no income here. This is all about outcomes. Yeah. And because we're not a large farming operation, we don't have any part of this that's a grain farm or livestock feeding operation. What we're doing here for conservation is simply about the outcomes. Mm-hmm. And and that comes at a cost, and it's come at a cost to our family in the sense that we've had to make sacrifices. Perhaps we don't get to go on the same vacations that everybody else gets to do, but Michelle
I would pay money to come here on vacation. You know what I mean? Oh,
well, and again, so for a moment, don't even think that this is a sacrifice in that regard. And that, we love it here, and Michelle and I both love to be out here. Our 2 boys that live in the area and their wives love to come out here. And it's simply a magnet for our entire family.
But I get what you're saying. It didn't come without cost. Like it was a hefty fee, even if it wasn't all about money. You talk about there was a barn you took down and rebuilt here on the property from down the road, and it took you 4 years.
Right.
And so that's serious cost. But before we move on from the house as a whole, I'm curious on your thoughts of now that it's off the grid and you have a taste of it and you're paying attention to your electric bill. I'm curious what you think of putting solar on roofs across the Midwest and, as an energy source for homes. Because we couldn't do that. We couldn't provide that many batteries for every home to have that in a current infrastructure. But is it worthwhile having all that energy and pumping it back into the grid where the grid can kind of treat it as a battery now that you have a little taste from a quote unquote consumer side of it?
Yeah, so we've actually tasted kind of both aspects of solar. So this being off grid and having a battery where the battery basically cost about the same as the solar system to install. And so when you think about the cost of installing solar on a gridded property, then double that if you want to be off grid.
Wow.
So that's one element of it. In our home in which we raised our children for 26 years, we had solar on the rooftop there. And we lived just outside of Iowa City in Johnson County, and so we were part of an REC. And so they would do a buyback, and so we could use the battery as a grid. Of course, we'd sell power back to them at a very, very small unit price. And so, we certainly benefited from the solar throughout, the day. But I wouldn't say we benefited too much in terms of the buyback program that the REC had. Now, with that said, we did it to offset, other energy production. Yeah. And to me, as we look across our country or our state, there are many, many places where the application of solar makes fantastic sense. And again, if it can delay or eliminate the need to build another fossil-fired power plant, then I'm all in and all supportive of it.
Yeah, I am a big fan of it. I don't understand all the math. I've had a couple different companies quote for solar for both my wife and I personally, and over at Hypoxia. So I know some of the math, but even if it was close to breaking even, I feel like the idea of having it be much more renewable there's value there, even if it doesn't show up right on the bank balance. There is value, and that's one of those, as Kent says, I think that's a way to love your neighbor, is to take a little bit off the bank balance, but be able to add that value.
I'm not the one who came up with the love your neighbor phrase.
That wasn't you originally?
Yeah, you got to take that up with somebody who's got a little more pull than I do.
Well, love your neighbor yourself. That wasn't you. I've been quoting you for years, dude.
Well, and certainly, as in the land, there's a similar calculation that gets done, and in the 120 acres that we describe as old man's timber, we have about 15 acres in a parcel that we recently acquired that's in row crop, and we have an agreement with a neighbor that farms it for us. He's a fantastic guy. We appreciate that agreement. But we've enrolled it in, or we've applied to enroll it in a CRP program. Yeah. And of that 15 acres, about 10 acres will be in a CP31 where we're going to plant 4,800 trees.
Wow.
Yeah. And then
that's awesome.
The remaining 5 acres will be in a diverse species mix focused on quail habitat.
Okay. You got to be careful on those
real quick.
prairie companies.
Is it raining? Because our windows are down.
No, it's not raining.
It's kind of awful dark.
It is kind of dark.
I don't think it's raining.
No, I haven't seen anything. I was looking.
I mean, I am in my work clothes, so if I have to ride back in a wet butt, it's just an hour and a half earlier than my butt will be wet from sweating out in the field.
But you do have to be careful with those seed companies.
Yeah, they're dangerous, and I've read comments online that they're just there to scam you. So.
Well, I mean, when I can go down to the local farm co-op and buy, good oats, for, a fraction the cost of that diverse prairie mix, it makes you kind of wonder what's all in there.
Man. This lady, she bought a bunch of backyard prairie, and she was local in Knoxville, and she was like, oh, and like, do you have lawn grass seed? I need like 1,000 square feet or something. And I was like, we don't really sell it, but like, you have I'll just go to the store. She's kind of like a local friend. And I was like, I'll go to the store and I'll just like charge you what it took me to go and pick it out for you. And per acre, it's like 10 times what we charge for prairie. Log. Yeah, I mean, a 25-pound bag or a $25 bag of seed, which is like 10 pounds or something like that, ends up, they say it covers like 500 square feet or 1,000 square feet. And then you multiply that out by 43,000 square feet. And it's a lot of money. And so,
Well, back to the point, before on just doing that calculation, we would be money ahead to continue, crop farming it, through a contract with our neighbor than we will in a small CRP payment that we're going to get. CRP program right now is down a little bit in terms of contract pricing. But for us, again, this is more about outcomes than it is about income. And to get that established...
Ooh, that's a great line.
Yeah. To get that established, woodland area and quail cover down there is going to be a great addition to our property.
Yeah, man. It's more about outcomes than income.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. That's really good.
All right. Well, everyone read the title. They know we're here for water quality. And what would it be? A couple weeks ago, I promised them on a coffee time that we would be catching up with you on water quality. And there's a lot of things that we want to touch. But first, let's just jump right into the meat and potatoes. You guys have a new program, and I don't understand all the ins and outs in it. I read a news article about it that our friend Katie shared on social media, and that's about all that I understood from it. And so, could you explain what was going on there and how that came about?
Yeah, so last week we had an announcement, and in fact we had a little press conference, and that's not something that we do very commonly.
Yeah.
But we felt that because
Did you have one of those boards that has like the Iowa, like basically what Kirk Ferentz stands in front of after an Iowa game? Did you get that same press room?
It was well branded with the University of Iowa logos behind it.
Yes, it was.
And so, I guess the short answer is yes. Although, of course, Coach Ferentz, commands a different room than we do.
Sure.
As academics and scientists. But
okay, the press conference about how you what's going to keep you from dying of cancer is over here. Okay, where's the one about football?
Oh man! Also, I got a bone to pick with you, Kent. You have been making fun of University of Kansas instead of Kansas University.
Yeah,
our state does the same thing. University of Iowa.
No. I say it should be University of Kansas instead of Kansas University.
Oh, okay.
It's so irritating how they do that. Kansas University. It just sounds so clunky.
KU.
There's zero flow.
There's zero. Yeah, but Kansas is a weird word. Kansas.
It's just so much easier to say University of.
Man. Anyway, I'm so sorry. You had a great branded board behind you. Please continue.
Yeah, so we're very proud of a new program that is going to be a collaboration of IIHR Hydroscience and Engineering, for which I'm the director, and the Center for Health Effects of Environmental Contamination, led by David Swartney.
Is that at the University of Iowa?
Also at the University of Iowa. Okay. And, together we're going to really start to combine environmental health and environmental exposure to various pollutants, to public health. And because of the importance of this topic in Iowa, we did feel it was appropriate to have a press conference and to be able to announce this program and really to share with the folks of Iowa that there's a new effort to really try to bring the scientific evidence and scientific data and information to bear on such a very complex issue.
Yeah.
The IHR program, it's 106 years old. We have
when I was reading that in the information I was reading, I was like, man, 106 years old.
Yeah,
that's quite a legacy to be there.
It's quite a legacy to be involved in the program. It's an even greater challenge for me as the director of the program to uphold that legacy.
Sure.
And as I shared in my comments at the press conference, what I think really makes IHR unique is how over 106 years we have stepped up and we've met the moment of the need for scientific research based on social and societal demands at the time. World War II as an example, we had faculty, staff, and students working 7 days a week and often 24 hours a day to help in the war effort. That's a big deal. That ended up launching, a naval hydrodynamics program that's been funded by the Office of Naval Research since 1948.
Wow.
So 78 years continuous funding.
Wow.
That's amazing.
Something I really like about you personally is nitrates in water and other water quality issues. They're really sexy right now. Like, people love talking about them. It's one of the main things in a gubernatorial race. It's at national levels. There's the union, the Farmers Union or something. It's a YouTube channel, big YouTube channel. They just covered Iowa's water quality. Great YouTube video. It's like 11 minutes long. Please go watch it. Way before all this was sexy, Dr. Larry Weber over here ringing his bell. Nobody was watching, but he knew it was the right thing to do. Even when the walls in front of you were vast and thick and looked unsurmountable. Did you ever think you'd get to this point where you're like, wow, there's the public is demanding change?
I do. I did think that we would get to this point. I think sometimes it's an invisible problem. It's when we go to our rivers and streams, you can't look at them and say by estimate what the nitrate concentration is. You could say if they're muddy or if it's high or low or flood or drought, but you don't know what the nitrate concentration is when you look at it. And as we started this program and of doing water quality monitoring, that goes back to 2013. So we've been at that for about 13 or so years. We run the nation's largest real-time continuous water quality monitoring network. And we've faced some, incredible opposition for doing that scientific research.
Yeah, the state tried saying we don't need it anymore. All's good, right?
Yeah, they cut our funding, first partially in 2023 and then fully in 2024. And so we've been operating for 2 years without state funding. We've been able to keep the program, that water quality portion of our program, funded through a 2-year grant from the Walton Family Foundation. But the Walton Family Foundation program officer...
Is that the same
That's
Walmart Waltons?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we learned about that from a guy at Pheasant Fest a couple years ago. He explained how incredible conservation work.
Do you know why
it's done on behalf of that?
Do you know why?
Well, I'm sure greenwashing is thrown in there with it.
It's rooted back from when Walmart was started. It's because Sam Walton was an avid bird hunter. Avid. That's all he wanted to do was go to Walmart and make more money or bird hunt.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it kind of rooted off of that.
The greenwashing just takes a beating right now on you try, if we made a reel out of this right now, everyone would say we were bought and paid for by Walmart for this episode.
That's true.
And I get it. I understand the criticism, and a lot of people even go as far as to say that about American Prairie out in Montana, which has been one, at least in North America, the biggest prairie conservation effort that's actually other than maybe Pheasants Forever. Pheasants Forever has put a ridiculous amount of prairie back on the landscape, but American Prairie is right there with them. And so I'm not a fan of people using greenwashing to cover their sins. So I can get there with the criticism, but I'm also not a fan of saying we're better off getting nothing out of it.
It's balls and strikes. Everyone does bad and good things. Some people do way more bad things, but it doesn't mean they didn't do anything that was ever good. And as long as you're calling both of them and not ignoring the strikes because there's a bunch of balls and not ignoring the balls because there's a bunch of strikes, then it seems a little more fair. It may sound weird, but I actually ask my friends about their finances, but not only about how their finances are, but specifically things like how much money do you have in your bank account? Are you saving for your kids' future? Do you have a retirement plan that's in line? And the reason I ask these questions is because I know that finances put more stress on most people than anything else. And one of the biggest alleviators of stress from finances in my wife and I's life was when we switched to McKay Insurance. Now, we did this way before they were a sponsor of the podcast, but once we did it, we got our life insurance lined up, we got our health insurance for a much better deal, and we were able to bundle everything that we had, and we saved a bunch of money. We're actually able to connect with the people who are giving us our insurance and helping us do our financial planning. I highly recommend McKay Insurance. That's McKayInsagency.com. So Larry, you were saying that 2 years from the Walton Foundation, but there wasn't any funding past that, which would start this year, right?
That's right. And also, I just want to kind of bounce back very quickly to the greenwashing. There is greenwashing, and that's certainly, corporate entities giving money to, various nonprofits with really no expected outcome from it. The Walton Family Foundation has very strong Mississippi River programs.
They follow up on it.
They follow up on it. They're doing research. And one of the things that was a follow-up to the grant that we were provided as a bridge to getting future funding was an expectation that we would have funding at the end of that 2-year period to keep this network up and running. Last summer, as you might recall, there was the Central Iowa Source Water Research Assessment Report that came out and talked about.
I remember that. Yeah,
the waters of the Des Moines and Raccoon River.
Yep.
And that was announced at the Harkin Institute at Drake University in August, early August. And that initiated a conversation that I had with Polk County supervisors, with Johnson County and Lynn County supervisors, that we needed funding to keep this network running. And those are the 3 counties with the largest populations reliant on surface water as source water for their drinking water utilities. And Polk County stepped up right away.
Yeah. We interviewed Jonathan Swanson. Great dude. Really like that guy.
Great dude and a good friend of mine. And I do recall in that you asked him if he knew me.
Yeah.
And he said, oh, yeah, Larry Weber would love me. And I do love John. And so I want to make sure that, that's on record. John's been a friend in conservation for a long time. And we were really delighted that Polk County stepped forward with $200,000 towards that network. Their funding is to support our overall network, and really it's unrestricted funding. Of course, we'll have sensors in the Des Moines and Raccoon and around Polk County, but it is unrestricted funds to support our network operations.
Wow.
Johnson County matched that with $200,000.
Wow.
But a little bit more restrictive in that they have some expectations of the number of sensors in Johnson County and the number in the Iowa River flowing to Johnson County.
That makes sense.
Lynn County came forward with $100,000. Again, we're very appreciative of that, with some expectations on Lynn County and the Cedar River watershed. Wright County came forward with $35,000 for a new sensor on the Boone River in Wright County. The city of Decorah met us with $17,000 to keep 2 sensors running on the Upper Iowa River, so that's been fantastic. And then the Isaac Walton League, through a GoFundMe page,
that's right,
collecting, $5, $10, $20, $100. Donations from people across Iowa, raised $80,000.
That's incredible.
And they raised an incredible amount of awareness of the issue. So we've met our goal.
That's I believe that's a hunter-based conservation group, right?
It is.
Isaac Walton League.
It is.
A very old
organization. So when you say your goal, that's for keeping these monitors running for another year?
For 1 year.
Yeah.
For 1 year. And then throughout this last year, we've also had a number of these same groups, Isaac Walton League and other conservation groups, Iowa Environmental Council, and a few others, that have been advocating to the Iowa legislature that this should be a state-funded network.
Yeah.
As I describe the source of fundings, you'll note that we could end up in a condition in the future where we've got some counties with monitoring, other counties with no monitoring, depending on the source of funds and the restrictions put on those monies. And so all of a sudden we could imagine an Iowa where we've got the haves and have-nots as it relates to information about their water quality.
Yeah.
And we really need to have that be statewide again.
That is interesting. So think about asbestos. I remember you can apply for a bunch of different things to remove asbestos, which is good. Asbestos gets in your lungs, very toxic, it'll kill you. Toxic water is, how are we spending more money on asbestos removal than we are on monitoring to see if our water has the quality we need to survive off of it? But I understand what you were saying earlier. I don't feel myself gain a bunch of weight. I don't get a headache after I drink the water. It's really, if it is bad for you, it's slow. It takes quite a while. We're not talking about like E. coli in the water. We're talking about nitrates, and their effect are much slower. So there's no immediate gratification on solving this issue on the ground level. But still, the fact that we can't rally in the Midwest to solve our water problem for our largest metropolitan areas is wild, because I learned in 5th grade from my science teacher, Miss Sehusen, that the 3 things you need for human life is water, food, and shelter. And water's first. You know, it's just so crazy. And $500,000 is just not that much money on the state budget. Even a state as small of an economy as Iowa, it is not that much money. And in fact, it wouldn't be that big of a deal if they 5x'd at $2.5 million.
Well, and I think, as I've said for probably the last 10 years, is that water quality will not be important in Iowa until it becomes a public health issue. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the, kind of the turning point that we're at, today in our state, is that it's become more of a public health issue. We've learned through the Iowa Cancer Registry and the wonderful work that Mary Charlton has done over there, that we have the second highest incidence of cancer in the country and the highest rate of increasing cancer of any state in the nation.
Yeah, a friend of mine who lives nearby, I should say a Facebook friend of mine, just posted yesterday, just found out he has cancer yesterday, colorectal cancer.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, one of those that are very closely tied to nitrate exposure. Mm-hmm. And because, as Nicholas, as you've said, this is a long-term exposure issue. It's not, boy, I drank the water and I became ill, or I drank the water and my stomach became upset. This is over a long period of time and long exposures. And now we're seeing in the city of Des Moines, yet again this year, where their nitrate removal system is running at full capacity. In order for the water utility to meet the demands, they've got to start to do some water curtailments and limit the use of water for different members of the community.
Which is interesting because it's not a drought issue.
It's not a drought issue.
It's in no way a drought issue.
And remarkably this year, and maybe we heard last year, depending on what sources you were listening to, that it was, it's this one-time thing, and we just have to get through this year. And well, maybe it was because of the weather, because it rained, and we had rain after a few drought years. We're sitting here today having measured the highest nitrate concentration in a stream in Iowa that we've ever measured was 49.1 milligrams per liter.
Wow.
49.1 in the stream. We're measuring concentrations upward towards 100 milligrams per liter in tile discharges. And so now when I look out over, our Iowa Water Quality Information
System. And what's
system,
the EPA recommended?
10.
10.
The EPA recommended limit, the EPA limit is 10. Now, there are folks that have, again, for a decade or longer, have argued that standard should be reduced to 5 or even be reduced to 3. 10
is there any legitimacy to their argument, or are they just way out there on a limb?
No, there is legitimacy to that argument. 10 was established for sort of the instantaneous or one-time exposure to infants and blue baby syndrome. Oh. The longer-term health effects of continuous high levels, let's say above 5, have nothing to do with blue baby syndrome. That's the colorectal cancer. That's the bladder cancer. That's the other things that are coming into play. So here we are in our state. Look across the network that we operate, and routinely they're above 10. Often, and if we go there right now, there are many above 15. There are several above 20, and there are some that are at 25. That's too high.
Yeah.
We've got to start to figure this out. We think about load. So if we measure concentration and we know the discharge from the USGS Geological Survey, they have the flow. We can put those together and get pounds per day or pounds per month or pounds per year. We are on track right now in the second week of June to being the highest nitrate load loss for the state of Iowa of our measured history.
Wow. Which is since when, you said?
Well, about 2012, 2013.
Okay, yeah.
That we've had this type of data. The DNR has been tracking load leaving the state of Iowa back into the early 2000s based on their monthly grab samples and their ambient water quality monitoring network.
Why? Is it our rain cycle that's causing more? I mean, we know that when we put a lot of fertilizer or manure on the ground and it leaves through the tile, but we have that every year. So why is this year more?
Well, again, there's this ongoing, long-term, continuous application of commercial fertilizer. There's a long-term, ongoing, continuous application of livestock manure. And we're building up a nitrate surplus in our soils.
So we're not an outlier. This is just on the graph. We're just on the graph heading up.
It's on the graph.
Hockey sticking up,
Yeah, it's on the graph. Now, again, we think about this in two different ways. Is it source limited, or is it transport limited? So is it supply limited or transport limited? We have an unlimited source or an unlimited supply because of the commercial fertilizer and manure livestock applications. We can be transport limited. So on a dry year, of course it goes down. On a wet year, of course it comes up. But if there's water flowing vertically through our soil column to those tile lines, at this moment, there is an excess amount of nitrate that's readily available to absorb to that water to then be transported downstream.
A new explanation I've heard pitched is no-till farming is to blame for the sudden bump in high nitrates. Back in the old days, you tilled that field black, you incorporated all your corn husks and bean trash back into the soil, and that the nitrogen was held in place better because it was incorporated into the soil. Is there any? To me, it sounds like a big excuse. Is there any validity to that?
So I'm neither a soil scientist nor an agronomist, and so there would be other people that would be better, educated to answer that question. But when I hear questions like that, the other thing that I often think about is, what if we think back over longer periods of time? So often we're so focused on what's happening today or what happened this year. Well, it rained a lot or it's dry, or we did this or we did that. But when we look at the data from a long time ago, in the early 1900s, water quality samples were collected, oftentimes around the creation of the flood mitigation reservoirs that were installed in Iowa, Saylorville, Red Rock, Rathbun, and Coralville. And in those water quality samples, we continuously saw nitrate concentrations of 1 to 2 milligrams per liter. So I would think of that as the ambient, the background. This is our legacy nitrate concentrations in our streams. Now, of course, a lot's changed. We've added all the tile line. We've intensified our agriculture. We started applying commercial fertilizer more routinely in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Well, all of a sudden, that 1 to 2 milligrams per liter rose to become 3 to 4. And then 4 to 5
in the 60s and 70s, before no-till farming was used at any scale.
So all of a sudden we go up to 4 to 5, and now again we see, with the explosion or the increases in confined animal feeding operations and the number of hogs that we have in our state under roof at any given time. We see a large increase in livestock operations, and today we're at 6 to 8 milligrams per liter. Or perhaps I should say yesterday. Today we might even be higher. And I'm expecting that under the current trajectory, we may have a statewide annual average nitrate concentration in our streams that exceeds 10 milligrams per liter. Statewide annual average. And that's not going in the right direction.
No.
I mean, I said years ago, back, in 2015 was the original target of the nutrient reduction strategy across the entire agricultural Midwest to reduce nutrients to the Gulf of Mexico by 45%. Didn't meet the goal in 2015, so they moved the goal target out to 2035, and they put an intermediate target of 10% reduction by 2025 in place. Well, in 2016 and 2017, I was saying that not only will we not meet the 10% reduction by 2025, in Iowa, we will have doubled our load by 2025. Well, in fact, that came true by 2019. The load leaving Iowa doubled. It's continued.
Why? What changed between the 2013 time and the 2019?
All the same things I've already mentioned.
Just on increasing levels?
On increasing levels of fertilization, of livestock manure, of
additional tile.
Pattern
tiling has been around for a long time, but I have just noticed from driving across much of the state, around 2020, I just started seeing way more, and very, very, I feel so privileged that we're getting to enjoy
this cabin in a storm.
A June thunderstorm in this. Can we light that fire? I mean, it's 105 degrees outside, but can we? But just from watching, and maybe I wasn't paying close enough attention. That's the thing about anecdotal evidence, right? How
you
reliable
see what you're looking for,
right? You see what you're looking for, but it's just in that window of that big jump that Nick is asking about, I just noticed a lot of pattern tiling.
Well, again, so you've seen that and have that memory anecdotally. When we were running the Iowa Watershed Approach Project, and we built 800 conservation practices and 8 watersheds across Iowa, spent $40 million on cost share in that program, worked all across the state. In the Middle Cedar watershed, so basically from Cedar Falls to Cedar Rapids, that's a Huck 8 watershed, one of 58 in the state of Iowa. We there spent around $7 million on conservation practices, and we built about 80 practices. Over the same 6-year period, 8,400 miles of new agricultural drainage were installed in that same watershed. So we're looking at roughly 12 to 1,400 miles of agricultural drainage in one watershed installed over that same on an annual basis over that same period of time. And so again, I say this often, we are not keeping up with the pace of the industrialization and intensification of agriculture in our state. And I celebrate every bioreactor and every saturated buffer and every nutrient removal wetland that get installed, but the pace of that conservation is it pales by comparison to the pace of the industrialization of ag.
Yeah, the input is infinite at this point, right?
Yeah.
Because it's an annual crop and it's annually fertilized. So there's a fresh new supply every single year.
Right. And, sometimes, again, we talk about, golf courses and goose poop and all these other, kind of albatross ideas, and studies have been done, Keith Schilling, and maybe we even talked about this when I came on last year. But, golf courses, managers have access to that fairway and that green every single day of the season. In our row crop agricultural system, the fertilizer and the livestock manure in particular get applied before the crop is planted in the spring and after it's harvested in the fall, with perhaps a little side dressing that happens early in the growing season.
Yeah, because that's the big difference, is that there is something alive to pick up things at the golf course.
You did the math on this once at how many golf courses we would need in order.
Maybe years ago after I read Swine Republic,
in order to equal the amount contributed by agriculture.
In terms of fertilizer added to golf courses and lawns, I did the math on that once, and there's like 40 million acres of lawns and golf courses, and they add
Lobe Rangers. They just had a reel on this. It was great. Yeah,
I even commented
it was like 7,000 pounds per acre or something like that of fertilizer.
I commented that this was a criminally low viewed reel. Because their reels should just have way more.
I think it's picking up views because I keep getting notifications about it because I reposted it.
Oh yeah. I mean, they're sharp guys, but what it boiled down to was it was obscenely more fertilizer went on yards and golf courses. But the big difference is there is a live root there to pick it up. There's a live root to do something with it.
Well, the other big difference is that in many of our watersheds, we have 85% by land area is in row crop production. We don't have 85% of it in turf lawns.
Well, I think Keith Schilling's results was that if the Raccoon River if you replaced all of the crop land with golf courses, it would be like 90% cleaner of nitrates.
That could very well be. Could very well be.
It's just... I get it. Makes sense. It's a good excuse to start, but then as soon as you actually do research and data, you go, "Oh, okay. Actually, that wasn't a good excuse. It was worth looking into, but we've settled it. Please stop saying it in the comment section. It's just not the same."
Well, and we're sitting here right now, and it's pouring out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting a pretty heavy thunderstorm coming through here, and the scientific data and the research shows that when we monitor saturated buffers and bioreactors, and we put a sensor on the inlet, put a sensor on the outlet. That under, let's say, low flow operating conditions, they're reasonably effective. But when we get rains like this and the tile flows start to come up, then immediately those saturated buffers and bioreactors go into a bypass mode. Right? There's a head box.
Overwhelmed.
There's a diversion box that they put a couple stop logs in that increase a pool level that push water over to that saturated buffer and bioreactor. When the tile starts to flow high, then that stop log gets overwhelmed or overtopped, and it's bypassed directly to the creek. Well, when you think about nitrate load that's coming off of a tile system, not only when it's heavy rain like this do we have an increased concentration, but we have an increased flow. Those get multiplied together. So if our concentration went up by a factor of 4 and our flows went up by a factor of 4, well, 4 times 4, it's 16 times the load has just gone up. And so when you evaluate a saturated buffer or a bioreactor based on load, their benefit is very low. And so that's not meant to be a criticism of the practice, but it's meant to demonstrate the dynamic nature of how the system operates and the need for more scientific data to then improve the design of those saturated buffers or bioreactors, or maybe divert whatever funding we have into other practices, into other strategies, and to do different things. But if we do it without data, then how could we ever expect that anything will change?
If we put a saturated buffer and a bioreactor at the end of every tile, that would still not fix our problem, you're saying?
I don't believe so. Not under their current designs, and not with the allowance for the flows to bypass during heavy rain.
Now but you are saying it is a step in the right direction, but not to what we'd need, especially in storms like this.
Again, we celebrate every conservation practice. Every pound of nitrate that we can remove from our stream is a good pound of nitrate to remove. But when it's at such low effectiveness, it's never going to meet the needs that our society is beginning to demand, that we have drinkable, fishable, wadeable waters.
What would you... I'm glad that we don't have dictators, in the state of Iowa, and that we don't, and that there is a democratic process. But let's pretend you were a dictator and you were allowed to make a law about water. What would you do that you think could fix it? Because I know it's not your job to figure this out on the socioeconomic side, but I know you think about it, and what could we do?
Right, and so because it's not my job, but doesn't mean that I don't have ideas and insights and opinions. Certainly the number one most effective conservation practice is land retirement. And when I think about this, it just seems so obvious to me that we really need to develop a water plan for the state of Iowa that focuses both on surface water and groundwater. And the last time that we did a meaningful update to our water plan was in the early 1990s. That's 30 some years ago. Our climate is changing. Our agricultural system is changing. There's been a lot of changes over that period of time. And we just haven't had the courage or the strength or the leadership to be able to step forward and do a meaningful water plan for the state of Iowa. If we did so, it's likely that we would find out that we've surpassed some tipping points. Tipping points in terms of perhaps the amount of livestock feeding operations that we have in the state. Maybe we're oversubscribed on that. Now, could there be through policy or through generational change an opportunity to reduce the number of those feeding operations? That would be one strategy. Perhaps we've exceeded the tipping point in terms of row crop agriculture in our watersheds. Could there be an opportunity through generational change or through the next flood disaster that we have to take more of that land that's in production, especially those lands that are so closely connected to our rivers and streams, and put those into a perpetual, permanent floodplain easement and have a benefit? So I think we've got to start thinking about this natural world and this living world that we live and work and play in as more of a systems approach. And so to me, I think starting there is the most important piece. Coming in as a dictator and saying that we're going to establish rules or regulations or laws that immediately stop certain things, I think that, perhaps again, there's some obvious things, but first I think we should have a plan. There are, some practices. We should be doing soil testing. We should be applying the right rate, the right amount, the right time of nutrients, although those things make sense. I think that we've got to think more carefully about, our fall tillage and our fall fertilizer applications, especially in light of climate change. A few years ago, we had a rainfall event that happened around Thanksgiving or just after Thanksgiving holiday. We had a subsequent rainfall event between Christmas and New Year's. Those are going to happen more and more often as our climate continues to warm and change. Well, those two hydrologic events resulted in so much of that fall manure that was applied and so much of the fall anhydrous ammonia that was applied coming out of our system. And so over a 30-year record that we have of the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers, that year was the highest for that 3-month period of 30 years. And not only was it the highest, but it was 3 times higher on one of the rivers than the previous high, and 2.5 times higher on the other river than the previous high.
Wow. How do you grapple with sovereignty for someone to do with their land as they please and the general good for the public, especially when it comes to water, right? 'Cause it's just impossible to own water when it's flowing through our system. How do you wrestle with those ideas?
Well, again, I think first and foremost, you had mentioned, I think it was water, food, and shelter. We can also think about the commons. Our water and the air that we breathe are part of our commons.
Yeah.
Paul Johnson so eloquently described in the Groundwater Protection Act in 1987 that groundwater is part of our commons. We need to protect it. It is a responsibility of all of us to protect our groundwater for the common good and usage of everybody.
Yeah.
We need to start thinking about our surface water in the same way. It is part of our commons. We should all have a responsibility. And so it shouldn't be that we just continue to expand treatment facilities to make sure that we can provide treatable, potable, drinkable water. But we should think about the other uses within the watershed. We would like to be able to fish and swim and hunt and wade and paddle and do things of that nature. Likewise with the air that we breathe. We should all be responsible to protecting the air that we breathe against chemical drift and other contaminants because we all benefit from having clean air. People have asked often, am I concerned about the water that we drink? And I say yes. But thankfully, for many Iowans, their drinking water comes through a treatment plant. And we can argue about the levels and the standards for which the drinking plant is required to adhere to.
Let's take a tiny little town in Iowa, but not too tiny. Because I imagine if you get small enough, everyone's just on a well. But let's say Williamsburg, Iowa. It's close to where we're at right now. I mean, not, what do they got? They got the strip mall over there, and they got a McDonald's and an Arby's.
Was
pretty
it 4,
small
000,
town.
5,000 people? So.
Do they have? I assume they have city water. Does a town like that have the capability of denitrifying? Is that the right term? Denitrifying the water, the city water, like what is it? Des Moines Water Works has. Do they have those similar technologies and capabilities? Do they? This is coming in at 14, 15. What is it, milligrams per liter?
Milligrams per liter.
Milligrams per liter. We got to get that down to EPA standard of 10. Are they able to do that?
Well, for the most part, those communities rely almost entirely on groundwater for their drinking water utilities.
So they're taking it in through a well.
So they're taking it in through a well. They're drawing it from deeper, either one of the deeper groundwater, the Jordan and Solarian well lenses of groundwater. And so generally speaking, that water is going to be in very low nitrate concentrations. Now it may have to be treated for other things, but very low. It's usually more expensive, but at that smaller scale, that makes the most sense.
Okay.
As opposed to building a giant.
That's good to know.
Nitrate denitrification.
Yeah, because this has been a real fear of mine. Is all these small towns everywhere. It's sure great. Des Moines has enough of a customer base to do the heavy financial lifting on the technology, but what does a Williamsburg do?
The other thing is just locationally. A lot of those small communities just aren't located on a river or a stream that could support a surface water drinking utility. And so, we think about the early settlement, and again, there'd be, historians that would know all of this better than I do, but, the major settlements are oftentimes on river corridors because of transportation related benefits that they gain from that. So Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, Des Moines, Council Bluffs, the Mississippi and Missouri River communities would benefit in that way. The larger rivers, again, the Missouri and Mississippi, tend to be low nitrate concentrations. because the source water is coming from much further away.
Yeah.
The Mississippi, typically is in the 2 to 3 milligram per liter range.
Wow.
But the drainages are coming from Wisconsin and Minnesota, and,
Right,
the upper part of the headwaters where row crop production might be 10% or less.
And the Missouri's coming from prairie states.
Yeah, it's coming from prairie states, and it's coming from the Dakotas and Montana and, the western states. And so not the same effect there. So again, typically those larger urban areas were immediately drawn to that surface water because it was a good source and it was plentiful.
Yeah.
And I think one of the challenges, again, if we're moving forward without a plan, groundwater, surface water plan, there's so many pressures that are coming into our water resources, both in terms of quantity and quality, that we may be facing difficult decisions that are unplanned for. How do we decide, is it a community that gets first access to the water, or is it an ethanol plant? Is it a community, or is it a large animal feeding operation? Is it a large animal feeding operation or a data center? And we're starting to see, the number of folks that are tapping into those resources, simply expecting that water to be available. And climate scientists have projected for decades that our part of the world is going to see deeper, longer, prolonged droughts that get broken, ended by intensified torrential rainfall. In 2024
Wait, that sounds familiar.
Doesn't that sound familiar? And so again, anecdotally, Kent, you might have seen that.
Yeah.
Scientifically, we can record that.
Yeah.
And again, we're in a really unique spot on Earth, in that have you heard the term atmospheric river?
Yeah.
So California had a drought, right? 10-year drought, decadal drought that was broken by a hydrometeorological condition that was set up with warm, moist air coming off of the Pacific as atmospheric rivers and providing torrential rainfall.
And that's when they have their mudslides and everything else.
Exactly. We have a similar occurrence here with warm, moist air that comes from the Gulf. And that warm, moist air that comes up from the Gulf then intersects cold Arctic air. And where that intersection happens is where we get this very intense rainfall.
Oh, interesting. So Minnesota, Iowa, northern Missouri, Illinois, but if you keep going further north or further south, we don't have it.
Correct. And that's called a mesoscale convective rainfall event. So that's the the scientific term for it.
Word for the day.
Yep. We'll call it atmospheric river. Now we can count those and count the occurrence of when those have happened. And you can put a little red dot where they happened. And when you look at a map of the lower 48, the bullseye of that map is in Iowa and the northern third of Missouri. That we have the greatest occurrence of mesoscale convective rainfall events.
So torrential downpours.
Torrential downpours. And as our climate continues to warm and change, the expectation is that line is going to shift northward.
Oh, interesting.
So then we'll be seeing more of the nitrate problem.
No, I think he's saying we'll get less rain, right?
Well, we're going to see, and so what we've seen, again, historically, is that with climate change, if you look at the annual average rainfall in Iowa, roughly, 30 to 36 inches, depending on what part of the state we're in.
Right,
annual average precipitation. That trend line is going up very, very, very slowly. Maybe 30 became 31, and 5 has become 36. But it's happening in fewer events.
Right. So wouldn't that create more nitrate runoff problems further upstream, because now they're getting this, how do you say it?
Mesoscale convective rainfall.
Mesoscale convective rainfall to the north is because those are really when the nitrates spike, right? Is because this intense, you have all this water erosion, this runoff erosion that's pulling these nitrates through the tile lines.
The land can't handle the stress.
Probably some across the surface, right? I mean, when it gets heavy enough and it hits saturation point, right?
That's right. And so it's the 2 points, really. It goes back to that need for a plan that our water resources are going to become more and more scarce or stressed. And when that rainfall doesn't come, as 3/4 of an inch every week, 52 weeks of the year,
it's once a month.
But it comes once a month, or it comes once in May and then not again until September.
Yeah, you don't get the benefit.
You don't get the benefit because so much of it is coming off so fast and moving through our system so quickly that we're not getting the benefit of it. There's a lot of hydro explorers that, as energy prices, fluctuate, people have an interest in developing a lot of distributed low head hydro. Mm-hmm. And, oftentimes they'll look at a river and they'll say, well, what's the mean annual average flow? And then they can do a calculation to see how much power they generate. Well, that mean average annual flow only exists like 2 days a year, as the hydrograph is going up and the hydrograph is going down. So if you built a plant for that, during higher flows, you miss all the energy capture. During lower flows, you've got equipment that's not even spinning because there's not enough water to power the plant. And so we can think about our usage of water in the same way, is that if we plan for the average as an available resource for all the things that we want to do with it, for industry and agriculture and urban uses, we're never going to have the right amount of water. At the times when we have too much water, we can't take advantage of it because we don't have the demand. At times when the water is too low, we're going to have too much demand and no available resource.
Man, Riley said that a year ago. He kind of predicted, he's like, I don't think Iowa's going to have as much of an issue with how much rain we get. But his argument was that we won't be able to catch any of it. And he's like, if you get 25 inches of rain, but you only keep 3 inches of it. And his argument was tile, because it all goes out the tile. Well, congratulations, you're Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, does tile play a measurable part in climate and meteorology? Because I'm sure an acre of it doesn't, but I mean, we're at like over 10 million acres of tiled
I think we have
ground.
What is it? Can you verify me on your phone? Because I'll sound like a buffoon if I'm way off on this, but I'll do it. I'll take that.
You'll take a guess?
There's 2 numbers that stick out in my head: 800,000 miles and 2 million miles of tile. And I can't remember which one it is, and if one is just in Iowa and one is in all of the Midwest or something. But do you know, Larry, how many miles of drainage tile we have in Iowa? I want to say it's 800,000.
I think it's the 800,000 number. I think it's around 1 million. I think that is a number that resonates more with me.
So crazy.
13 million acres. And this says 925,000.
So it's gone up.
Miles. Yeah.
Yeah, a million miles of tile.
By the way, if you want to know when a direct subsidy payment has just been released and you're not a farmer, just look for those giant reels of tile.
Yeah, ask the tile diggers. They make or break for them. But we got to be totally honest, because CRP is the same way.
Yeah.
CRP is make or break. Prairie companies, I know this by having conversations from the smallest guys to the biggest guys. You rub 2 pennies together 2, 3, 4 years in a row, and then 1 year there's some big CRP thing, and boom, there's everybody's got a new
We
tracker.
go to the Golden Corral for lunch every day.
Don't let Kev fool you. He goes to Zippin. He goes to Gourmet Zippin, and he gets his
Have you ever been to a
chicken.
Golden Corral?
Oh, yeah. I went to one in, I think it was Louisiana. I'll tell you what, no locals.
I don't think I've been to one in probably 15 years almost. But man, back in their heyday, they were the place.
Yeah. But the tile is it is very interesting because it's a total disruptor, of our water cycle, and I get it. This comes back to the conversation of sovereignty of land versus the commons, which I made a comment on a podcast the other day where it's like, if you could keep all the water that falls on your ground and it never touched anyone, then I'm all for you doing whatever you want with that water. But if it's going to end up in a commons river or a lake, then we have to have, some sort of something to, I hate the word regulation.
No, but I think back to the point, and whether we thinking of it as the commons as kind of this holistic and kind of altruistic kind of viewpoint, and of course I'd love it if
some
everybody
might even
was
say socialistic there, Larry.
Yeah, some might, but I would also take it another step, and that is that the agricultural system as it has evolved and perhaps even been designed into a two-crop system that's heavily vested in corn and soybean production, heavily vested in ethanol production, heavily invested in confined animal feeding operations, is also been heavily supported through federal programs, USDA programs that have come in and really designed this system and support this system. Mm-hmm. And so we need changes in the Farm Bill. We need to set different priorities in the funding that comes through the Farm Bill that supports other things, supports more diversification. And for those farmers that take and are beneficiaries of federal taxpayer subsidies and support, then also need to be serving, the folks that provide that tax base.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I can't get it through my head that there could be major program funding that comes to agriculture because of things like trade imbalance that are direct dollars to farmers' hands with no environmental benefits provided back, to the society.
Yeah, no strings attached.
No strings
attached. Do you think we could, let's say we change policy to be really good. Do you think policy alone could change it where we start seeing way more diverse crops and landscapes in Iowa and the Midwest?
Well, I do. And again, I think, as I said, people won't care about water quality until it becomes a public health issue. People also are caring more about where their food comes from.
Right.
Yeah.
They really care, I think, or people are beginning to care more about how much processed food, how much sugar, how many carbs, where their food is coming from. Mm-hmm. There's a real interest in local food markets. People developing, direct farmer to consumer models for things and doing it in a way that also makes these producers whole. I mean, I've heard, that the farmers market culture amongst their producers can be cutthroat.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
People want to start and they want to do an organic farm and they, start with a half an acre or a quarter of an acre, and all of a sudden they're at the farmer's market and the, guy down the street, selling his tomatoes for 10 cents a pound less.
Yeah.
Of course, he's selling out and you're going home with a truckload of tomatoes. So.
Well, actually, in larger farmers markets, they're having issues with, I don't even know if they'd call it issues, just middlemen. They're really good at farmers markets. They'll go and buy truckload from the Amish.
Yep.
They'll show up at the farmers market and sell out, and they didn't actually grow it. And now, I'm not saying that's just totally wrong. I'd like to eat tomatoes from the Amish, but there's like in Knoxville, we've been fighting really hard to get our farmers market going. But it's chicken or the egg, man. It is the chicken or the egg. Because to get people to show up as vendors, you got to have people there. But to have people there, you got to have people show up as vendors. And it's easy to get people to show up with their little Cool Whip containers of whatever but it is very hard.
They're Cool Whip containers of what?
Well, have you seen the people they sell Tupperware at farmers markets?
What?
You've never seen this?
No.
Oh, dude, they go around and they go from market to market.
Oh, you're talking about little trinket vendor type stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, it's cool. Like when people come in, there's a person at Knoxville who sells 3D cats, but they're 3D printed and they're puzzles for kids.
Oh,
so
okay.
You can pull them apart, each part of the cat, and they're actually pretty hard to put back together. That's cool, but there's not that much food at the. And so I go around to all the vegetable people there every week, and I go and I buy something. And it's
a knick-knack market instead of a farmer's market.
Yeah, and that's fine, but it's not a farmer's market.
Right, yeah.
And so you have a chicken or the egg. Well, then the problem, Kent's been harping on this for a while, is if you have, let's say we all got back to farmer's market, it's great, you're still going to have one farmer at the farmer's market who's a lot better at selling stuff, and then he goes to the other and goes, hey, don't even show up on Saturday, I'll buy your stuff from you, I'll sell it on the Saturday morning farmer's market. And then you got Walmart again, right? You're 10 years from having Walmart, and that does become an issue. But I don't know, it feels like a ruthless cycle that I don't know how to get out of.
Well, Zach Lane has talked about this a lot in his campaign with what does he call it? Market fundamentalism, where this idea where you just let the economy take care of itself. And I think we want it to work that way, but you just can't remove intentionality from buying and selling,
or the human condition.
Right.
Human condition,
because the human condition is what ends up spoiling it. And I think you just have to be intentional in where you're buying your stuff, not just for your own good, but for the good of your neighbor. And really, we kind of joked about it earlier, but it does come down to loving your neighbor. I think that would be a great campaign slogan for somebody. Hey, love your neighbor. And that's really what gets you concerned about all this. I want to step away from the high-mindedness here, though, for a second and go to, I have a practicality question on the nitrates, and then I want to talk about PFAS a little bit.
Yes, I wanted to bring up the
PFAS always get left out, and I think it's an important part of all this. That I should have put 2 and 2 together with my question earlier about the small towns where they get their water. Who has a nitrate concern flowing through their faucets without the excessive intervention from the water treatment centers in Iowa? So we know the Des Moines area. What other part? So I mean, is I'm on rural water where I live, so it's coming. I know it's coming from an aquifer. Do I have much of a nitrate concern? We have a filtering system on our drinking water, but is that a concern for a guy like me? It doesn't seem like it is for a guy in Williamsburg so much.
Well, is there anywhere that doesn't worry about the nitrates in Iowa?
Well, again, some of those deeper groundwater sourced utilities will not have a nitrate issue, so they should be okay. But because you're on rural water doesn't necessarily mean that it's a groundwater sourced. Some of it can be groundwater under the influence of river water.
Yeah, mine is from, I think it's 6. I think they have 6 deep wells near the Skunk River, though.
Yeah, great.
Is how it's worded.
Awesome.
So is that getting polluted by the Skunk River then?
Again, I can't say without going back and looking at that particular rural water utility. But if they're deep wells, then they're most likely actually sealed on the upper part of it, so the actual extraction is happening at the bottom of the well.
Okay.
So that's probably okay. The other part that I think is really important for folks to understand, and again, someone like David Swertney would be able to answer this more directly, but the number of rural wells that we have that are individual private wells or smaller community wells that are under some community size also have the ability to have arsenic in them, could have PFAS in them, could have other contaminants and need to be tested. And so commonly, those wells are grossly under-tested and under-sampled.
Just your average Farmer Joe out in the countryside,
yeah,
drinking from his personal well.
That's right. Or small acreage owner, or even unincorporated areas that may have individual wells or a small little community.
Are those likely influenced by nitrates because they're more shallow?
Could very well be influenced by nitrates. Even some of our smaller communities that don't go all the way down to the Jordan and Silurian aquifers can be influenced by nitrates.
But the Jordan, because that's where I get my water. That was pretty good.
That's the worst one.
No, that one should be good.
Okay.
Causes you to wear toe socks.
But there are. But the point is that we need to be sampling. We need to be not the collective we, but those individuals need to be having their water tested. For too long, folks have just taken it for granted and only by assumption have assumed that their water's fine. But there's a lot of prevalence of arsenic in our waters of Iowa.
What is arsenic?
It's a naturally occurring
toxic element.
Element that's in our geologic bedrock. That can be exposed through our drinking water.
This man's never seen arsenic in Old Lace. Come on.
No.
It's classic old play.
What is yes, what Kent does every weekend goes to the
I
old play.
love going to plays.
Would you? No, I think you like musicals.
Yeah, I like
plays and
musicals
musicals
too.
are very
no,
different.
I like plays too.
Oh no, I do enjoy musicals.
But I do.
much
Yeah, I
more.
like musicals better probably.
Man, oh yeah, old cultured Kent. You know him. Okay.
Say what you want. I don't watch anime.
Anime's culture is ahead of its time. Have you ever been to Tokyo? No, ahead of its time. They've got 5 downtowns.
That time hasn't arrived for me, Ken.
Yeah. So PFAS. What was that watershed seminar?
Well, hang on. I'm not ready to move on yet.
Okay.
So in Iowa, who needs to be concerned about nitrates coming through their faucet? Like what regions of the state? What municipalities? Maybe.
So really anybody that's getting water that is under the influence of surface water.
Okay.
And again, most often that's direct extraction. Oftentimes there are lateral wells and other collection devices near the stream. And then the third piece of that would be, there's a number of communities that have very shallow wells. They had a resource because they have a river that's nearby. There's alluvium that holds water, and so they've drilled into that and they're taking water out. Manchester a few years ago had an issue with nitrate in their drinking water. And again, some of those cases, they're just not very deep. And so it's directly under the influence of what's happening on the land surface.
Okay, that's. I think that's good practical information to know that.
And again, there's probably some study that should be done. The farm that I grew up on, our well was 32 feet deep, and it was located right next to the fuel barrels.
Oh,
and it had a hydrant,
lead fuel.
Yeah, leaded fuel, of course. It had a hydrant there that we cleaned out all of our farm equipment, the sprayers and everything. Right there. Yeah. And so who knows what was in that water?
Oh, I drank out of the well at Hypoxia. I drank out of that well my whole childhood.
Sure.
Really?
Sure.
Drank straight out of that sucker. It was as shallow as could be, right next to where we clean off all the equipment. And, chemicals over there.
And so one of the things that's so important when we say that, so I have no idea, and it would not be humanly possible to recreate what my exposure history was to the water that I drank. Nor for you, Nicholas, and nor for you, Kent, irrespective of where it came from. But we can't recreate that. And so part of what we're trying to do in this new program, Iowa Insight, which is the Iowa Integrated Network for Science, Information, and Geospatial Health Tracking, is to look at the environmental data of environmental contamination that we have, increase the monitoring that we have of our surface waters and our groundwater, looking for arsenic and radon and the nitrates and the PFAS and everything else that's out there in our environment. Also then do biomonitoring to understand what's in our body. There's more and more technologies available that we can look at blood samples and urine samples and body tissue samples and start to get a composite of all the contaminants that are in our body. Then the next piece of it is going to be with epidemiologists to connect those two. What have been your exposures? What's in your body? What then are the health outcomes and health effects that you might have? And then, try to create not just correlations between what we see happening with people's health in Iowa, but the linkage in causation and knowing that, okay, Nicholas, in fact, you have this exposure history, you have these things, you have this health outcome, make that causal connection.
Yeah.
How strong does the correlation have to be before you jump to causal?
Well, we have to go beyond, and so putting dots on a line is one thing, but then it's really to go beyond just the dots on the line or the dots on the graph, but through the epidemiological
context,
studies, we got to either, in my case, it'd be understand the physics of fluids, and is that physically possible for that thing to happen, and really get to the root cause of what are those triggers, what are the, the disruptors that have happened that have created that health condition.
I have one more nitrate question before we go to PFAS. Matt Hatala, I believe, brought this up to us. I think I promised I'd ask you about it because he knew we were coming here soon. His I don't know if it's really a complaint, but maybe a concern was we hear all the time about fertilizer applied, but we don't hear enough about the CAFO side of our nitrate problem. I assume that they're mostly the same issue because we're using you'll hear industry people say, "Yep, and we have to have this watertight, pit that collects all that manure." And the next logical step is, it's an infinitely deep pit, huh? Our good friend Luke Fritsch, who you would love, he farms and teaches AP calculus. He goes, yeah, but then don't you just spray that all on the ground?
Right.
And so to me, it's one and the same, right? The row croppers are using this immense amount of manure that is produced, not just by hogs, but poultry as well. We have, I think we're like one of the top, if not the top, I think it's turkey producers in the
eggs.
country. Yeah. So we have incredible bird confinements as well in our state. That manure, it's not the problem that it's being generated up front. It's the fact of we have to do something with it, and it's going on the ground in a row crop operation. Is that a correct understanding for how the confinement part of the contribution happens?
It is. That's a correct understanding. And I think the other piece of that's important to note is that, applying it in the spring before the crop gets planted, as that seed germinates and as that crop starts uptaking nutrients and is relying on those nutrients, to grow and thrive, that's one thing. It's another piece to know that confined animal feeding operation pit has a storage capacity of about 6 months, and it needs to be emptied in the fall as well. Okay. And so when that gets emptied in the fall, then of course that
it's
manure,
on the ground for a long time.
It's on the ground for a long time
with no live root. And again, as we see, our falls and anecdotally, our warmer winters,
how much warmer it's been in the fall. We have our own points of that as it relates to hunting.
Yeah.
But we're seeing these less deep frost and freeze levels in the winter. We may get some extreme cold. That's all part of climate change, but it doesn't last very long. And we may get some heavy snow. It doesn't stick around very long.
Yeah.
So we get these thaws, and again, we saw active tile flow all winter long last year. And so that manure that was applied in October, is just sitting there waiting to be taken. And so I think it's fairly common that if you were a producer, that if you had a true tight system and you wanted to put a value on that manure applied in the fall, you would put less value on it than the manure that gets applied in the spring. Because the likelihood of it being available for the plant in June and July is much lower than it gets applied in the spring. And that's half the manure.
Yeah.
That's half.
Yeah.
It's not a small fraction, it's half.
Yeah, it is part of it is the generation of it too, just because we have so many dang animals that we have to get our pits emptied twice a year.
Right.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And there's been, some conversations around, land values in Iowa, and as commodity prices softened for, a few years ago, that, land kind of remarkably stayed pretty high. And one of the competing factors for that land was having places to apply manure from CAFOs. So a producer that's got a number of CAFOs is continually looking, perhaps is producing more manure than what the land that they're, farming on can reliably accept. And so some of that land is getting bought up so that it's another place for them to, to haul their manure to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really... it really puts it into perspective. Okay, ready for PFAS?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts, but let's jump into PFAS. So we were at a seminar thing. I can't remember what it was called. Watershed something.
Oh, the one that you and I were at together. It was, I think, the Mississippi River Research Consortium.
Did you meet Jeremiah Haas while you were there?
I don't think
he was
did.
there. Oh,
yeah.
we should have shook hands.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Weber here, he wasn't there very long. From when I got there late, and he had to leave early, so we didn't overlap very, very long. But I remember the first talk I was at was a gentleman who talked about PFAS in the water. Are you going to Watershed 26 this summer?
Yes, I'll be there.
I'm supposed to announce that. I'm going to be at Watershed 26. Highly recommend. It's being...
I think I'm planning to go too.
Yeah, he's busy. He's the Great Outdoors Foundation.
I think Judd's planning to go as well.
Yeah, no, Judd has to be there. He's gonna be manning the booth, and we'll have hats there, I guess. But we really like the Great Outdoors Foundation. You know, they're just a needle mover. You know, they're able to actually get some stuff done on the ground. I really appreciate them. I promised that we would announce it. I need to do a better word. I need to get out on social media. So this is my reminder. But we're at this last, and the person this was in like February, and the person that I came in and watched first was he was talking about PFAS in the water, and I was embarrassed to be like, I never really thought. I'm so busy talking about nitrates, you know, and PFAS are like a gateway drug for conservation because it's really popular, and people go, oh my goodness, plastic, blah, 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 we need to use more metal jars, I need to have a garden, I need to do this, you know, and the only way,
you may not have high nitrates in your house, but you for sure have PFAS in your house.
It's everywhere.
Oh man, yeah, you're not getting away from it, you're just limiting exposure. What role is that playing in the water? And the fact that you're not saying you're doing nothing with it, but you're not ringing the bell as hard as you are with nitrates, makes me think it's not as big of a deal, but that's just a strong assumption on my part.
Yeah, I think with PFAS, so Marty St. Clair gave that talk. He's part of our team and works very closely with David Swartney.
Should we have him on? What do
you absolutely should have him on.
I'd love to have him on.
Can we have Robbie come with him? We don't get to hang out with Robbie.
Yeah, Robbie, for sure. In fact, we should, if we had a little more time, we should swing by and see what Robbie's doing this afternoon.
That would be so much fun.
I think,
Well, Kent's outdoor plans got rained out.
Yeah.
So.
Robbie's just cool.
Yeah.
I like that Robbie smokes. I know it's not good for Robbie to smoke, but I like that Robbie smokes.
Yeah, Kent has an affinity to millennials and Gen Xers.
You know, people with like neck tattoos, they always get attention.
Yeah.
People that are in their 20s and 30s that smoke cigarettes, I'm right there. Tell me what you have to say, dude.
His whole argument is that they went through Teen Challenge and still smoke, and he thinks that's just the coolest thing.
Everything. All the you don't die from tobacco, singing cowboy commercials.
Right.
I just love that about Robbie.
Yeah, he's a bit of a Renaissance guy, right?
Yeah,
he's going to do it his way.
Yeah,
he's a cool dude.
Also an avid bow hunter.
He is, absolutely, and and so I can appreciate that. The PFAS issue is a growing concern, and Nicholas, the fact that we're perhaps not ringing the bell on it. I think you're going to hear that bell rung more and more. There's some growing information, and David and Marty have been working on this. PFAS in shallow wells along the Mississippi River. And again, there's a lot of very shallow wells on the Mississippi River. And so this is PFAS that's born from industries outside of Iowa. In some cases inside of Iowa or along the river. And so I think understanding that human health exposure to PFAS is going to be one of the areas within the new Iowa Insight program that we're going to focus on and target. One of the things that I would say is surprising to us is that nitrate has become this issue that 10 years ago was hardly talked about. Mm-hmm. Now it's on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Right.
People are upset. They're rallying around it, but there's so much more to be concerned about.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're rallying around nitrate is good. It is a benefit to all of our water quality related issues, but more needs to be done beyond nitrate. And this is where I think in this last legislative session, there was some narratives that were out there that, well, the DNR does one thing in their ambient water quality monitoring network. IHR runs this real-time nitrate monitoring system. The USGS is doing some other things. And there were some folks that, made an attempt to sort of pit one against the other. My statement and my standing on that is what the DNR does is absolutely vitally important to understanding the water quality health of the state of Iowa. What the USGS is doing is also equally important. What we're doing is just as important.
Yeah.
They complement one another. They don't compete against one another. But within Iowa Insight, one of the things that we will be expanding is also our grab sampling. So in addition to running this large network of real-time continuous nitrate sensing, going out, collecting grab samples, and doing a full environmental chemistry analysis of the contaminants at that location is going to be, I think, building out a stronger database and a stronger case for things like PFAS, things like, other chemicals that are born from industry, other chemicals that are naturally occurring, other chemicals that are born from agriculture. And so, we're not in any way targeting any one industry, but rather doing this as a service to help protect the people of Iowa. And I think as we started, we were, chatting about things and, and this being an opportune time to be doing this work. As people have used that word, I don't think of it as an opportunity. I think of this as a responsibility.
Yeah, that's a good distinction there.
I lead a group of people, nearly 200 people strong, faculty, staff, and students that are leading engineers and scientists that focus on water-related issues. And given the expertise of our program, if we were not serving the state of Iowa, that would be a dereliction of duty.
Yeah.
People would say, gosh, you're a public university, public funded faculty. Why are you not bringing your skills on these issues?
Yeah.
And yet, as we bring these skills on these issues to the state of Iowa, boy, it seems like there's some pushback in some cases that say, well, why are you doing this? We're doing it in service to the people of Iowa.
Yeah, I love that.
Man.
One thing I wonder about with the PFAS, if you watch the movie Dark Waters, the exposure there for that little community, I don't remember the name of the town, it was in West Virginia, I believe, was chemical dumping, a chemical dump site. I mean, I'm not super well versed in Iowa manufacturing, but I got a pretty good idea. I just don't see that as probably being our reason we have, PFAS in our water here. I guess I would expect it to be, no, since the 50s, people have been using Teflon pans, and it's in flame retardant stuff. It's in waterproofing materials. So in other words, it's coming to us through a commercial usage, and the stuff, I mean, it's a forever chemical, so it's always there, and it gets, as the old Gore-Tex, backpack hood that you'd put over your backpack breaks down and flakes apart. Some of those PFAS get taken away in the river water and from landfills and everywhere else. That's how I would perceive us to have it, or is it kind of both? I mean, don't we have a big ammunition part of it's like a military base down in Burlington, right? And maybe some of that, but I mean, where are we getting all this in our water from?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, and one thing that we would often talk about, as it relates to flooding, is that Mother Nature always bats last. And that's been probably said in different.
I've never heard that before. That's a great phrase.
Yeah, and so sometimes we think that we can outsmart,
right,
coastal storm protection or building cities and urban areas and doing things where we shouldn't be doing. Mother Nature bats last.
Yeah.
I think that's a key one. But as it relates to the, just again, the industrialization of the world that we live in, that has become so reliant on manufactured products. We're always trying to race ahead of, the boogeyman or what's happening behind us. And so, we discover something, it's not a great product. We further engineer it. We bring more science to it. We create some new product. Wow, a generation goes by or a decade goes by or a year goes by, and we find out, man, that's not really good for us. And then we try to do something else. And where we're vulnerable is that too often, again, we don't have the public health studies that are connecting those new products to what impact they have on people, what impact they have on our environment, what impact they have on our ecological systems that are out there. And so we're forever going to be playing whack-a-mole with this stuff. And I think a lot of what's happened in these forever chemicals is, probably to nobody's fault that they created Teflon or Gore-Tex or these products that were widely accepted into society because of the benefits that they provided, but we didn't understand what the long-term negative effects were.
Yeah.
And, we start to see some things where, gosh, weeds are becoming glyphosate tolerant. Well, let's hit it with another new chemical.
Something that's better at taking life.
Right. Something that's better at taking life, more destructive to that particular weed. And before we are able to spend the time to understand what impact that has on either ecological or public health, we quickly get it to market. We get it out there because it's taken care of Palmer amaranth or something.
Yeah. Well, so
it's always reactionary.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It was no one's fault that someone invented Teflon. In fact, it was impressive, whoever did it, that they invented it. It was the company's fault when they figured out what was going on or had an inkling of what was going on their impact they had around the world, and then they covered it up and stuff instead of owning it. That's difficult to grapple with, and I try to give people benefit of the doubt. In fact, I think I annoy Kent when I do that. When I'm like, well, yeah, but you got to see.
You give some pretty undeserving people the benefit of the doubt.
Well, I don't know.
Jesus is the only one allowed to do that.
Loving thy neighbor. And so, but when we as a public are saying water quality matters to us, I mean, in Iowa, that basically just decided a primary election for us. It was one of the big things, if not, I think, the biggest thing. And we're saying that, but you're still not getting your funding at the legislative office. And what is that's frustrating to me. There are a lot of pieces, right? And so lawmakers and administration, things like they are, I would say there's always more variables than just our side of the coin, but it just feels like the only true variable that goes against water quality is money. Is there, whether it's money in the public's pocket or money in, a small amount of large company or whoever's pockets, have you found any legitimate reasons why you guys couldn't get your 8 pennies from the state office that doesn't involve money? I'm asking you to play devil's advocate. Is there any real reason that you could come up with, or good arguments that don't involve money? Because it's really easy when you start talking about money to be like, well, but think about the single moms, we start taxing them heavier. And now all of a sudden I understand that. But you can't use outliers or anecdotes as your decision-making process.
What's wrong with anecdotes? I've been using those.
It's the interpreter. That's what's wrong.
I obviously know
you're the problem.
You need hard data. Yes.
Well, if it was my anecdote, it would be solid. It'd be rock solid as evidence. But are you able to play devil's advocate? Are you able to sit there and be like, okay, that makes sense. I don't agree with it, but that's a good reason why maybe we shouldn't pursue this water quality initiative?
No, I'm not able to play devil's advocate and come up with a determination. As I mentioned before, I think we're facing a monumental task here in Iowa in understanding not only our water quality contamination, but also air quality. And we're at this moment in our state's history where we need to tackle this with every resource that we have available to us. And I think that we need a strong federal presence on this issue. EPA, USDA, Health and Human Services. There are many different federal resources that can come to bear on this issue. We need every state agency involved: Iowa DNR, IDALS, HHS, Department of Public Health, also leaning in and leaning forward on this particular issue. We need conservation groups, we need commodity groups, we need private individuals, and we need academic researchers. We need all of us working on this issue to be able to come up with solutions that help to ensure that Iowa is a livable state, for our children and our grandchildren. And I would say, if I had one frustration from this last legislative session, it seemed that as much advocacy as there was for the need for doing this work, there was also a lot of noise that was out there, sort of trying to pit one against another. And it shouldn't be, that our network is better or worse than somebody else's, or our data are better or worse than somebody else's data. Again, assuming it's all collected correctly and, the protocols are all there. It should be about consolidating the best information that we have, bringing the DNR's data along with, other state agencies and federal agency data together, along with research data to really tackle this issue. Yeah. It is not simple, and it's not a single entity's responsibility to solve this. We've got to be working on it together. And I think we lost some of it together this last year.
I've talked about this before, but my concern with what you're saying there, because I agree with you. Point blank, I totally agree with you on that. But my concern is that it's hard to describe, but let's imagine someone, let's talk about debt for a second. If I want a house and it costs $100,000, we're
back on the cabin, aren't we?
yeah. It's always about the cabin. We never left. And it cost $100,000. I will pay for that for the next 20 or 25 years or whatever. And every time I make that mortgage payment, I know, okay, I already got the benefit for this. I already received it. Mm-hmm. So I know that it's still fair. But if I buy a PS5, or let's say a nice gaming computer, and I put it on a credit card for $2,000, and for years I'm paying $120 a month to pay off that credit card. But let's say after 4 months, I'm tired of the gaming computer. I don't play it anymore. So now I'm paying money on the benefit I already received and a benefit I'm done with. Mm-hmm. I feel like as citizens in the Midwest, but particularly Iowa, but I think some other states have done this as well, we have done that with our land, where we cashed in, we indebted ourselves and said, I want to get all the benefit right now. So with corn and beans, the thing corn is really good at is getting money out of the land this year. That's why we use it as much as we do. And it's very storable. I don't want to discredit it. That's the two major reasons that we use it. But the reason, that's why the United States pushed it as a government. The reason individual farmers pushed it and all went into corn was because it's really good at getting money this year. And so now, to fix our water quality issues that have been caused by row crop and fertilization, we would have to admit to ourselves, we already got the money. We're not getting any more money. In fact, now we're in debt and we have to pay money for a benefit we got and we spent on an RV. We have to now pay resources, whether it's volunteer time, more tax money, not getting our roads fixed because our tax money is having to go to something else because we can't afford more tax money. We have to have that pain or give up those resources because 7 years ago, I bought more land at an inflated rate. And does that make sense? Like, we've already spent our resources and we've never paid the piper. Now we're having to pay the piper.
Yeah, and I think just another way to think about it is that, we're producing commodities, and whether it's grains or livestock and other food products, and we're selling them for less than the full cost of production. We have not included the environmental or public health cost of the agricultural system. Okay, so I think that is
that's
one.
a much better way to explain that.
yeah, and so I think that's one way that we look at it. The other thing that I think is important, for people to think about, and that is that, if the old saying again, if I have a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And so if I've got something like corn, then the continued development of uses and byproducts of the second, third, and fourth order to continue to make sure that we've got a market for that corn, we've put so much energy and emphasis into that. Yeah. What if we put an equal amount of energy into diversification to other things that we could grow?
Yeah.
And started to think about those in a different way, then I think we would have a different system than we have.
Why
today.
don't we do that?
Well, I think we've been
a lot easier to make one combine
that
does 2 crops than 3 combines that do 6 crops.
Yeah.
Right. And or maybe we're even doing things that there isn't a combine for yet.
Yeah.
And we've got to go out and do hand harvest, or we've got to, even think about some of our lands that we've put into perpetual easements, again, like these floodplain easements. What about the service that's providing to our society? Well, it's real and meaningful. Ecological services are real and meaningful to our system. But when we ignore and neglect all of those for only one service, and that is the sale of a two-crop commodity system, then we've lost that part of the value statement.
Yeah, that's a really great point. I'm gonna wrap us up, but Kent, you got something you wanted to? You looked contemplative earlier.
Well, this is Larry. Larry is one of the ultimate guests.
Yeah,
we get great guests all the time, but there's a special group of guests where you can both pontificate, get philosophical with, but then just hit them with rapid fire factual
and you're a good
questions.
hang.
Yeah, and he's a fun hang.
hang.
Not just because you have this awesome cabin. You're truly a
We're not just trying to bribe our way back here.
but so I mean, I could go forever today, but you got a place you got to be. I sort of have a place I have to be now.
I was promised ice cream.
Yeah, that's right. We got to go get ice cream. What is one practical thing that if you could have all Iowans do in relation to their water use, that would make life better for them and especially any dependents that are in their care?
Well, number one, it's to know what water quality they have. So get their water tested, be informed about their water utility if it's a drinking water
What's the
utility.
best way for someone to get their water tested?
So there's a public assistance to counties program that provide free testing for anybody in a private well. And again, oftentimes those funds have been left not fully spent and utilized. Over the last year or so, as this water issue continues to elevate, it's my understanding that they're getting closer, if not actually getting to the cap limit on those funds. So get your water tested. That's number one, if you're on a private well. Number two, if you're not on a private well, spend the 5 minutes or the 30 minutes. Invest in yourself to understand where your water is coming from and what the water treatment standards are for the water that you're drinking. When people have asked me, through the years, with the Flood Center and the Iowa Watershed Approach Project and other things that I've been involved in, what is the thing that I'm most proud of? And it's very simple. It's that we've raised the literacy on water resources issues in Iowa. People understand what floods mean and what droughts mean, but yet it's remarkable to me that I could identify a person every week that I talk to that doesn't know anything about the cancer issue in Iowa, doesn't know that we have water quality concerns and water contamination in our drinking water systems. And so it's clear that we need to do more in education and outreach and communications. And again, that's where I think it's all hands on deck. And, again, I applaud what you do in the Prairie Farm podcast because you reach another sector of people on this issue that may not get exposed or may not have been exposed to the issue. So I appreciate everything that you do and the diversity of the audience, of the guests that you bring in for your audience.
Well, thank you very much. That's very high praise coming from you.
I'm really sorry to do this to you right at the end of the podcast. We cannot leave without asking you about data centers. And we don't the two big things with data centers that people hate. I mean, the job thing, the AI, I get that. The water and the electricity use. So just for now, in your lane, the water. Do you know anything about it? How they intake, what they use, that kind of stuff? I don't understand it.
I don't know as much as others. Keith Schilling is another guest that's been on in the past.
Does he know a bunch?
He does, and Keith would be a good person to have on to talk more about data centers.
Didn't he retire recently?
So he is in the process of stepping down as a state geologist, and he's going to stay on for about another year or so before he fully retires. But I suspect Keith is of the type that retirement will still involve scientific and technical work.
I was going to tell you that off air when your day comes to retire. You're too valuable of a resource to Iowa that I hope you find a new avenue to positively impact our state. And I hope the same for Keith.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's thoughtful. But I think one of the again missing elements on this data center discussion is, what is the state's role in helping to plan these data centers? And I think there's too many local one-on-one transactions that are happening between an entity that could be a giant and a community that could be a relatively small player in this negotiation.
You're saying we need to get the power of the state level administrator or lawyers or something.
Well, we need some policy. How many data centers? What is the carrying capacity for data centers? Where do we have water resource availability and access that we don't have other pressures on that could be used to support a data center? Where might we have energy resources that could better support a data center?
Yeah.
I have, again, concerns and maybe some skepticism that we've got, this well-trained, finely tuned, legal and administrative team that shows up in community A in Iowa, gets to the 9th step of a 10th step negotiation, and so that we didn't get what we wanted in step 10, and they go up the river or down the river to the next community, maybe smaller in size, starts that whole negotiation over. And I think if there was a better oversight that protected those communities with a little bit stronger administrative and legal support to make sure that the deal is a good deal.
Yeah.
And that the details are understood better. A lot of this is happening under non-disclosure agreements. And so things are held pretty tight-lipped. You could say that's, to protect a particular strategic industry. I would say that that may be the case, but it may be just simply for the expediency of trying to get something cited, to get an agreement in place, to get the equipment in to start building these things. And for me, I'd say pump the brakes. Things are moving fast, and I'd be a little bit concerned about, again, long-term impacts of being first in line.
Yeah. We're done posting data center reels, guys, okay? But we're not done talking about them. Right now, people are screaming their heads off. No, I don't want them. I don't want them. I don't want data centers. You know what? I don't want technology that we've had for 10 years now. But my fear is that if we can't come up with some kind of proactive way to deal with this, like you said, I think makes a ton of sense. Right. If all we can be with is saying, no, I don't want it, no, I don't want it, no, I don't want it, you're going to get it. Because these are the wealthiest, most powerful companies in the world. How well did the Epstein thing that everybody wanted dealt with go? Did we get our way on that, American people? And it's not a question of, no, I'm going to scream loud enough that I don't want this. It's going to get force fed to you, almost guaranteed. So if you're going to be proactive about it and make sure you don't get screwed in the deal, is you have to come up with a very powerful and unifying plan to deal with it. And it was just in the news, I think today, was it Clinton County just overturned their moratorium? They had a moratorium in place. There will be no data centers. Well, guess what happened? The rich and the powerful show up, and I don't know how, but all of a sudden the moratorium's flipped.
Right.
And so that just happened yesterday. There's 99 counties in our state. So if it's that easy, you can expect 99 counties of data centers then. And if all we do is just stay angry and having no positive way forward with this, proactive way forward with this, we're going to get them, and it's going to be a bad deal on top of it.
Well, and I don't know if we'd get them. The most vulnerable communities.
Right. The most vulnerable communities will get them that already have other problems that they're trying to overcome.
Right. And to me, again, this goes back to, do we have the right systems in place at the state level? Do we have the right state level leadership? Is there a more balance in that imbalance between power and money that's happening at these small communities? can we bring a little more balance if we bring the heft of the state of Iowa to bear on this? Now, again, we'd have to hope that we have the right-minded leadership and people that are doing the right things for the general public. But I think it's very difficult for these small communities. Again, where a lot of times their public servants are the butchers, the bakers, and the barbershop owners, to all of a sudden be, legal experts and water experts and energy experts, to be able to sit down in a negotiation with a data center that, is protecting information, doing things under NDAs, sometimes even coming in and doing their own explorations of resources without making that available. And we've got a geological survey in the state of Iowa that should be charged with understanding the groundwater and mineral resources of the state.
Absolutely.
Put them to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm sure some people get their wheels greased and they sell out or whatever. But I got to imagine, like you said, a lot of these people are just everyday people, and they are completely intimidated when giant company X, that's $1 trillion company, shows up, and they don't show up. Their lawyers show up.
Right.
Their team of many lawyers.
And so we got to find. I get it. Nobody wants them. I don't want them. But we got to come up with something better than just screaming about it.
I think what really bothers me about it. I don't love the idea of data centers, and I would probably fight pretty hard if one tried to show up in Marion, Mahaska, or Jasper County. If they came in and said, "Hey, we're going to give every single person every household $1,000 a month, for 30 years," I'd be like, "All right," But the point is like,
Nick's a sellout. You know that?
The point is balanced power and balanced give and take, right? And I like that's what you're talking about. What bothers me about it is, like, I understand we don't like data centers, but data centers are the price we pay for keeping all 10,972 videos you have of your beautiful 3-year-old on iCloud, on YouTube, making weird AI photos of yourself on Facebook and sharing them as your profile picture. Also, side tangent, you should be in your profile picture. That bothers me so much. Your kids can be in it, your husband or wife can be in it, your grandparents can be in it, but you should also be in the profile picture. I want to know what you look like. Because if people add me, tons of people, I get people add us on Facebook all the time. We don't know them at all.
Those people probably just have a mirror right outside their shower. They need a little ego boost.
But if I don't know what you look like, I'm not going to add you. But so we email. Our emails are all stored on data centers. So I understand we hate them, and I hate the idea of them. But if I want Oreos, I got to be okay with a little belly.
Our data consumption demands them.
Yeah. But if you say, hey, I have totally for the most part, I got off the grid. I use a little email. I Google search a little bit here and there. Then I'll listen to your argument about how data centers are the worst thing in the world. I'll get that. But if you're going to scream at us and comment on social media
that live on
a data center, come on. There's better uses of time. But anyway, I appreciate your outlook on the data center.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that's going to be the next big horizon for water quality, or do you think it'll be kind of a flash in the pan kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that's also hard to know. I think that there's some evolving technologies there that, maybe the water use and again, I think demanded by people is going to become more and more sustainable within the data centers. So we start to see the power density of energy production becoming more and more dense. I think the use of water could be optimized and made more efficient and more sustainable over time. But I think where we are today, we're just in an information desert, and we just don't know. And when I don't know, again, I have a little bit of a hard time putting my faith and trust in the powers that be that want to come in and force this issue. And again, when you see the actions of moving into and out of different areas, depending on what they're getting, it just makes you kind of wonder if there's something else behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. All right, last question, and then we'll hang it up and go get some ice cream. For people who are in deep aquifers, deep wells, and for people who are dealing with nitrate issues as two separate things, what kind of filtration system should they have in their home?
Well, certainly for the nitrate, reverse osmosis is the standard out there. It is basically what the Des Moines Waterworks is doing at large scale. But if we can't afford to do that at large scale, then at the home scale, that's a very effective system. Those are available. The prices are more reasonable today than they were, 5 or 10 years ago. But, for some folks, $2,000 or $3,000 is still a very heavy lift.
Yeah.
And just make this point very quickly, David Swertney was given a talk a week or two ago talking about what's happening in neighboring states. And when you look into Nebraska, they're actually providing public assistance for reverse osmosis system installation in the home for people that are in high nitrate levels and would benefit from that. There's, again, another I think progressive step that our state could be thinking about, because, putting $25 million into expanding the Des Moines Waterworks nitrate removal system, great for those folks. Going to take 3 or 4 years to get it built and installed and operational. But what about everybody else? And so I think there's an opportunity for some leadership in that different space.
That's awesome. Well, we really, really appreciate you hanging out with us. And not everyone can have as brilliant of a mind as you do, but we don't need to. Because as we know, conservation, all this water quality, being able to live in a common good area with the common good people happens one mind at a time.